everybody, Norm here. Before we start this episode, I want to thank the sponsor of this week. So this is only a test. That's Starry Station, the touchscreen router for blazing fast Wi-Fi. Say goodbye to your Wi-Fi problems and those confusing blinking lights, because Starry Station was designed to give you a better way to game, stream, and surf throughout your home. You can see your entire network at a glance, get suggestions on how to fix problems, and finally know if you're getting the internet speed you pay for. It even has parental controls that let you block usage on specific devices during certain hours of the day. And if you need help, you can request a support call from the touchscreen, and a Starry expert will call you in minutes. Learn more and support this podcast and our sponsors at starrystation.com. That's STARRY.com/test. But now, let's start the show for Thursday, June 9th, 2016. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello, everybody. Hello to my two co-hosts, Jeremy Williams.
Hello, Norman Chan.
And Kishore Hari.
Hello. I think it's better when you move the laptop around.
You do?
It's like a phase effect.
Ooh, I like phase effects, like a phaser effect. Hey, for people watching out there and for people listening out there, we are no longer recording this podcast from my living room and the terrible lighting conditions there. And we are officially in our new office.
I'm a little nervous, personally.
Yeah, this is not the final setup. We're actually still setting up, but we're in the physical space. And I guess that's what's important. It's important. It's maybe your first glance at our new podcast space. Again, completely unset up. We have like half the furniture from our office move just pushed up against the wall, undecorated, not set dress. The walls haven't been painted yet. And if you're watching the video to Kishore's left, you just see a mound, to the edge of a mound of trash.
Basically, at some point during this podcast, I'm going to have a mound of garbage come falling down on me. But I think it'll make for a good podcast.
Yeah, this whole table could just flip over and we could lose support. We're actually on a physical stage, elevated a little bit from the ground, but we don't have our official light set up. But I thought this would at least be better than the couch situation we were at last week, at least for your back.
No, I can sit up straight now. I like this.
Very good. Very, very good. How are you guys doing this week?
Not bad. Not bad.
Now, we're recording this on Tuesday because we have a lot of travel and just conflicts in schedules this week. So not a lot has happened since we recorded last Thursday. But Kishore, you had a big week.
You had a big week too.
I think we both had big weeks. Let's go with your week first. Now you're leaving at the end of this week on a big trip.
I'm leaving tomorrow to go to MIT Media Lab for a week for a series of conferences and discussions there. It'll be a lot of fun. I like going out to Boston. I was like, oh, it'll be Boston in June. It'll be nice. It's going to be basically the same exact weather as in San Francisco. But I'm really excited. I'm hosting a public engagement with science conference at Media Lab. And then I'm going to the Nerd Center for a couple days for a different conference. That's Microsoft's like innovation center down in Cambridge.
They call it the Nerd Center?
Yeah, it's like the New England Research and Development
someone
Center.
Thought they were really clever.
Yeah, it was pretty clever. It'll be a good time and catch up with some colleagues at MIT and Harvard.
What are you most excited to see out there? And have you been to Media Lab before?
I've been to Media Lab plenty of times. But I always like going. Usually, I have a couple friends that are researchers at MIT that show me around some weird places. So I actually like going to the museum. There's a MIT museum, and the bowels of the museum has just weird historical stuff that only a research institution would have.
Is it a museum that's open to the public?
No, I mean, they have a collections area that's not open to the public.
Cool.
So
what do you mean by weird?
Like they'll just have artifacts from like laboratories from over the years that they've, preserved and recovered. Like the dentistry school built like a working model of the mouth in the 50s that's like hand crank operated, which is like bizarre and weird. So I love going in that place. So hopefully I'll like sneak off and go on a few random tours. And then I'm going to check out a couple of media labs too.
And so what happens, like, 'cause MIT Media Lab works on, they are is a graduate department? MIT Media Lab? Is it UG?
Yeah,
or?
it's a really strange setup within the institution. Now, I haven't worked there, so I might not get everything right, but they essentially set up this as almost a incubation center, but not quite an incubator. It's supported a lot from corporate dollars, and they have lots of different labs across a lot of different genres that are designed to create new products and do new research. So everything from like, how are we going to grow plants in outer space or grow them in like crazy urban environments, to reformatting educational apps and development. So like Scratch, I think, came out of Media Lab, which I think a lot of us have used, right? You guys have used Scratch.
Yeah, my son and his whole school uses it.
So
I feel like the HCI stuff is probably the most interesting to me. That's all the experimental human-computer interaction paradigms and interfaces, things that you might see pop up at TED Talks, whenever they show projection interfaces, weird gesture interfaces. They come out of labs like these.
Yeah, and we talked about Tangible 2 weeks ago, which is a lab based out of MIT that has like the high density pixel like feedback operating table.
Low density.
Low density.
Low
I
density
said
right
high
now.
density.
I wish it was high density.
It'll
Low
get
res.
there.
Yeah.
But I love this stuff coming out of Media Lab, because every time you go there, it's something that you don't expect, which is one of my favorite things. There was a project out of there last year, 2 years ago, that this robot that would talk to you is this really cute, like kawaii style robot, and it would record interactions, and it was designed to study robot human interactions. And Chris Hadfield picked it up at a event in like Calgary or something, and he talked to this robot for like an hour. And all the robot was designed to do was prompt you to talk. It would ask you some questions and then record what you said. And so it was just fascinating listening to Chris like just talk to a robot for an hour. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Were they relevant responses? The questions, were they relevant to the discussion?
Yeah, I think Chris talked about the moon for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And it's this really cute little kawaii robot.
That's more of a testament to his ability to talk about, be an expert on so many things, being peak human.
It's for sure.
But testament to like MIT's technical competence.
No, but there's also a video of just like it talking to random people at on the street and stuff.
We should bring this robot into Tested and have it conduct interviews for us.
One of the researchers that worked on this product lives like a couple miles from here.
Take him to take the robot, he or she, to a event and have it interview people.
Did you know Miss Pac-Man came out of MIT?
No.
Yes.
Miss Pac-Man specifically?
That's right. Yeah.
Why Miss Pac-Man
There were some
over
students,
Pac-Man?
because there were students at MIT who were making modifications for games on the side, and they had a whole business out of this. They would sell new boards that would upgrade your maybe Missile Command or Space Invaders, might or might not be the actual games. But they sold these modifications to give new life to old video games, and they worked on Miss Pac-Man, and that's where Miss Pac-Man came from. They ended up partnering with who was it, Namco or whoever owned Miss Pac-Man, and turned it into the actual game.
Wow.
Then they dropped out of MIT.
Because they had all the success of Miss Pac-Man.
That's what you do.
Very good.
But that's bearing the lead.
Yes, wait, hold on.
Next week.
That's next week. I wanted to preface, because next week I'm not sure if we're going to be recording a podcast. Maybe. The other thing that's happening is next week, Joey and I will be on a trip out of the country. So maybe we'll have a podcast, maybe not. Oh, the skylight, the light just came in.
So you're keeping it a secret where you guys are going.
We have to discuss whether we can talk about exactly where we're going.
But I know it's out of the country now.
It is,
so
yes.
It only leaves a couple hundred options.
I know, exactly. But before we talk about what I know you want to talk about, we have to play this musical cue, which I forgot about because we had it last week, and it is...
That can't possibly sound better played live to an actual cable.
No.
That's perfect.
It is perfect as it is. Thank you, Mark, for making that musical cue for us. We got to cover the pop culture. And I'm sorry, Jeremy, a lot of the pop culture talk this week It's gonna have to do with sports.
What'd you do on Monday night, Norm?
I went to Oracle Arena.
Roracle?
I refuse to call it that. It wasn't nearly as loud as I was made to believe over television and radio.
Maybe because so for those who don't know, Norm went to one of the NBA Finals games.
NBA Finals Game 2, Warriors versus Cavaliers.
And Norm's long been a Warriors fan.
Mm-hmm. Grew up in
And
the
so
Bay
it
Area.
wasn't that loud? Maybe it's because it was a blowout. They won by 30 some points.
So yeah, it was a finals game, and full disclosure, the ticket was provided to me by ZTE, which is a sponsor of the Warriors, and they were there to show off their smartphone, their new Android phone, the Axon 7. So I wanted to check out the phone, got to go sit and watch the game with some other journalists, and yeah, the sound, it wasn't deafening, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a fun game to watch, and it was fun to watch. Be able to watch some of those players this historic season destroy the Cavaliers.
Here's how I figured it out that Norm was at the game is I was watching the game with my son, and they're about to cut to halftime. Like they're a couple minutes before, and they're like, "Stay tuned for halftime." They show a shot of the halftime set, and Norm's in the corner sitting next
on TV.
on TV.
Did you know that?
I did know that because I got a text from my friends and my fiance saying,
Any photographic proof of this?
yes, there's photographic proof.
Wow.
I think Norm retweeted the picture.
Yes.
Wow.
So the interesting thing that the game was fun, and it was very cool to watch this the NBA Finals game live. But what I also found interesting, because where I was sitting was immediately to the, I guess if you're looking at it from that camera angle, the right, but I was to the left of the ESPN halftime and post-game set. So they have a box suite where, it's actually a space no bigger than the space we're in now, where 4 people sit. And with the stadium, the arena behind them.
Good enough for ESPN, good enough for us.
And they do their halftime broadcast recapping the game so far, and they have their anchors all sitting there. And so to be able to watch the pre-production and the production of that, I found utterly fascinating. How much they have their notes, they're highlighting things, circling things, what they do during the game, watching the game. I have some photos I'll show you guys, and I'll post some of these online
And these
as well.
There's a coach, an ex-player, and an announcer that are on the team.
Yes.
That are
yes.
on camera. So that must have been fascinating to watch Jalen Rose watch the game.
That's right. And I would say that they don't pay attention to the entire game as intently as maybe some of the fans do. And they definitely have some production assistants giving them stat sheets and cues. But for the most part, they are watching the game and making notes and taking note of things that they want to.
Makeup artists and stuff.
Wait, is that a
yep.
TV or is that you?
No, that's a TV.
Okay.
This is a photo of a TV I'm showing Jeremy.
Yeah.
Pause at the moment before halftime when they cut to the ESPN shot. This is the back of the shot.
But are you seated right next to them like that?
I am seated right next to them.
Wow.
What
right
I
there
love-
over the
what I
glass
love-
wall.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the funny thing is there's literally just a glass wall between me and the ESPN set.
Yeah.
And I had my water to the right of me on the wooden platform, and a producer pinged our suite and said, "Move that water. It's in the shot."
Oh, it's like a brand name on TV that shouldn't be.
Or
there.
just like it was mucking up their shot.
Right.
So all those production nuances, and like seeing how where they have Apple boxes, their table, because they deploy that table, it folds up out of that Pelican case. They have wires, power strips underneath. They had a monitor showing what was on ABC or ESPN during the games, and the teleprompter, all that stuff. I loved seeing behind the scenes.
I have to wonder, because everyone at the arena is wearing these yellow shirts that they were provided. And the reason I noticed you is you weren't wearing the shirt. You were wearing like
I had
a hoodie.
the norm uniform.
You had the Norm uniform on, so you totally stuck out. It was a pretty wise move to get on TV. Wait, is that your first time seeing a playoff game?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I for basketball, I've been to baseball playoff games. I went to the World Series finals the World Series in 2002, and when the Giants lost. So hopefully, me going to playoff games doesn't mean that the Warriors will lose.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
2-0, right?
2-0.
And then, yeah, see, you're paying attention. I went to a Stanley Cup final game last night. The Sharks were playing the Penguins.
Exciting times in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I got to go to, and that was like a lifelong goal to go see a Stanley Cup final game. This is hockey for those who don't know what this sport is.
We have to be upfront about this, even though we are in the Bay Area and it is the Sharks that are playing in the Stanley Cup finals. You are not there to root for the Sharks.
No, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
You're
for
a
the
Penguins fan.
Yinzer's we got to represent.
Wait, it's Pittsburgh versus San Jose?
Yeah.
Really?
And Pittsburgh won last night, which was so satisfying, and to go up 3-1. But it was utterly brilliant to be at a finals game because that's the loudest I've seen the Shark Tank ever be, especially in pregame. They gave us these like lights that actually like reacted to music. So as they're playing, Metallica played the national anthem last night. So it would react to like the music that was playing and light up in different colors.
Oh.
It was all synced up.
Not relying on the audience at all for any type of active participation.
It also location based or no?
They did have location based. So like the upper deck would go at a different color than the bottom for certain songs.
But that was pre-programmed.
It was all pre-programmed. You just had to put it on.
Yeah.
That's it.
And flip it on and turn. Okay.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was like in stadium. It was amazing. And for hockey games right now, they do an overhead projection down onto the ice for the opening. And so they make the rink look like water with sharks like circling in
projection mapping on the rink.
Yes, and it's beautiful. I mean, you figure you have this white surface. I mean, it has a few painted lines, but
it's reflective.
It's reflective white surface. And so they do all these beautiful animations on the ice now. I think that started about like 2-3 years ago in hockey to do that. It was just a really incredible in-game experience, and my team won, which was even better. Friday night, I went out to have drinks with a lot of the hockey writers, so I got to hear all these stories from like past series gone by, from writers from like Minnesota and Toronto and New York and stuff. It was really spectacular.
Were you the only one cheering for Pittsburgh in your
there were
section?
A lot of Penguins
near
fans.
you.
No, like so there's a bar here in the Mission. We're in the Mission District of San Francisco called Giordano's. It's the Pittsburgh bar in San Francisco.
Oh, so good.
It's owned by a guy from Pittsburgh, and he was sitting in my section.
Wow.
They make good sandwiches.
They do. It's a ripoff of Primanti's, but it was good. So
I don't mind. They're fantastic.
I was really impressed with the level of technology that's being used in these games now with those like synced up wristbands. And
yeah, that's cool.
mat.
You got to keep the wristband, I assume, right?
I did. My son has it now. And
let's take it apart.
It just has like some LEDs in it. It's not too complicated, but we can take it apart.
Whatever.
You're unenthused. The other tech-related thing that happened at the game I was at, one of the reporters that I was hanging out with, had to buy some merch and buy some Warriors merch, waiting in line to buy a T-shirt, and we turned and there was Tim Cook and Eddie Hugh at the Warriors game, walking into an elevator.
Wow, there was some real star power at the Warriors game. I got Metallica at the Sharks game.
E40 was there.
Benioff was there on the court.
Chris Tucker was there. You're talking about like legit like tech stars, but yeah, they were also celebs.
You saw Chris Tucker?
I saw from a distance Chris Tucker.
No kidding.
And they also put him on the big screen, like please welcome. Which like do the stars want that? Because it gives away where they are. If they're trying to maintain any type of anonymity and incognito, or is it like part of the deal? Like they got a deal to get the ticket in, but then they have to be called out. I have no idea.
I don't know. It's price of celebrity.
They're always down front, so I'm sure they're in areas where like the
mid areas. I mean, they were expensive tickets. I looked before and after the fact. Like some of those tickets to get courtside, it's like $10,000, $15,000 for a seat. But even like in the first tier, it's like several $1,000s, which is why there was some controversy in the local Bay Area sports world where fans were just leaving because it was such a blowout. They were leaving like 6 minutes before the game, 6 game minutes before it was over. People were just leaving because they had to go home and watch their Game of Thrones, I guess.
Well, they didn't want to wait in the line to get out.
It wasn't that bad.
Really?
And for those people who paid $2,000 and $3,000 for a ticket, they probably got a good parking spot too.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing quite as satisfying as seeing a bunch of San Jose Sharks fans leave early.
Oh, God. Oh,
Twisting the knife.
So do you have 7 games too in that series?
Yeah, but the Penguins are up 3-1 right now.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
Well, there was another Bay Area team that was down 3-1 in a playoff series recently that overcame some Vegas odds. And
yeah, this is all dictated by geography, man.
all right. Any other bits of pop culture news? On the movie front, we had some interesting casting announcements. Pacific Rim 2 is happening, and it's going to star a newly familiar face, John Boyega.
Good for him.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I felt like Pacific Rim 1 really, the hero of that movie for me was Charlie Day. So
No, the hero was clearly
not the
girl.
hero, like the person I liked the most in that movie. I really like Charlie Day in that movie. So I'm still hoping. I love that John Boyega is in it. I hope they have like a well-rounded out cast, especially some comic relief.
I think if they're going to bring someone back, I mean, if it's clear that they're having a new star in it, and I really don't. I hope that's not like John Boyega is the son of the adoptive brother of Mako that they never talked about. Like, don't do that. Like, make him his own character. But if they were to bring someone back, Charlie Day would be an easy person to bring back just because he wasn't the main character, and so they don't have to take away from the new hero's story.
Have you seen this movie more than once, Kishore?
I only saw Pacific Rim once.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, me too. This is in that same category of these movies you guys like, and I have to think you like them ironically.
No, I genuinely enjoy it.
They're just horrible movies, but I mean, I get that there's good effects, and it's like Starship Troopers. I don't get it. I
don't like Starship Troopers
I just don't
either?
know. I have no understanding why people enjoy
They're
these
so
movies.
watchable.
There you go.
I feel like
That's
you
why they're
have
called
to have,
entertainment.
I feel like you have to have a bowl of popcorn to watch these movies. They're that
maybe that's
style of movie. It's definitely not one that I'm going to be like, this has made my top 100 list of all time, but they're really deeply enjoyable. How can you not like robots punching giant monsters in the face? That seems pretty great.
If you don't have a bowl of popcorn, you might need a bowl of something.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh
That's all I'm
wow. Shots fired. Did either of you watch the new movie that came out, either Ninja Turtles or X-Men Apocalypse?
Ninja Turtles came out?
Ninja Turtles came out over the weekend. I think it won the box office.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually really wanted to see X-Men Apocalypse, and just the reviews kind of curtailed my interest to go opening weekend.
Better than the reviews gave it credit for.
Oh,
it was
that's
like a sub 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and clearly not as polished and well written a movie as like the first two X-Men, or the second X-Men especially, which Bryan Singer also directed. But he went full comic book movie in this one with the costumes and the powers and all that stuff. So
They're just staying on the same trajectory. X-Men, the original, pretty good. X-Men 2, X-Men The Last Stand,
pretty crap. Yeah.
So I think it feels like that's the trajectory.
They made a joke about that in the movie, about the third ones are always the worst.
Oh, really?
And it was I think it was supposed to be a not so subtle dig at X-Men 3, but I guess it could also apply to itself.
Oops.
Yeah. Any last bit of pop culture news, whether superhero related or going once, going twice?
Can't think of anything.
I got my sports thing out. I'm happy for like months now on this podcast to talk
Really?
about anything.
You know, the other thing I'll say is watching a game live is fantastic, but I am truly spoiled by the quality of broadcast. Not just the fidelity of a high bitrate stream and shooting things in 720 or 1080 and the clarity you get, but also just the on-screen information, the high speed camera replays, slow motion replays, all that stuff. The pacing of a game live is so different than watching it. And I'm not just saying like commercial breaks, but amount of information you can digest.
I totally agree. And there's actually a lot of the higher end seats that'll have tablets now that have that in-game information in it, and some of the luxury boxes do as well. I totally agree. I was sitting at the blue line, which is like one of the best places to watch a hockey game, And there's still stuff that I couldn't see because it was moving so fast. So that super slow-mo, there was a shot yesterday that hit the crossbar. I heard the ping, but I have no idea. I couldn't see what it hit because it went so fast, even though it was right in front of me. So I totally agree. The technology that's used in game is just amazing. And then on some level, I miss the announcer too.
Yeah.
I miss the narrator of the story that's unfolding in front of me. Because there's stuff that I missed. I actually got home late last night. I rewatched the entire game.
I did the same thing. I've done it. Yeah. Yeah. Just to get that, the couch experience again.
You wanted to see yourself on TV.
No.
Oh, he's not wrong. I did look for myself but I was wearing a hoodie and I was like, oh, I'll stand out from all the teal. I'll borrow a thing from Norm. And there's a couple times I'm like, I think that might be me. Like it was close.
That pixel, that's me.
It gives me a new appreciation for the broadcasters and for the whole production team, all the camera people who operate they're like in at least Oracle Arena, there are these 4 or 5 stations above, right by the roof, where they have these massive broadcast long zoom telephoto cameras that aim at the floor. It's almost like they're shooting laser beams, except they're just capturing the video. And yeah, really cool stuff. All right, let's jump to technology news. Now, again, it's only been about 5 days since we recorded our podcast last, and some stuff has happened. I thought we could have done this entire episode of this week's podcast just talking about Elon Musk and his crazy ideas.
Would we have to put on like some VR helmets so we could live in the simulation with him?
Oh my God. Jeremy, did you hear about this?
You mean his interview with
Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg at Code Conference? So the whole interview is online. Code Conference, it's run by Recode and / Vox Media, and they've done it. It used to be All Things D.
Yeah.
And they get very prominent tech personalities and founders on stage, have frank conversations about their businesses.
I've just seen a couple clips. Is the whole interview online?
The whole interview is online, and they smartly also cut it to the interesting parts. So for Elon, it's talk about Tesla, talk about Mars, and because it is a very just frank ongoing conversation, I do audience Q&A as well. You get some stuff that just can be off the cuff. And I think the thing that got the most attention was a question asked by Vox Media, ex-Vox editor, Verge editor, Joshua Topolsky was one who asked this question. And he went up and he asked, Elon, do you believe that we're living in a simulation? Just like that. That was the question. And you would think oh, that's a crazy question to ask Elon Musk. Elon took it 100% seriously and started off by saying, that question, I've had so many simulation questions that he had to make a rule with his friends to never have simulation conversations and debates while in a hot tub.
Okay. Some things are off limits. All right.
That's right. So the question is whether he believes there's a chance that our reality as it exists is merely a simulation, and our experiences are just computation,
like the Matrix,
like the Matrix, but not like even going beyond the Matrix. Not even like our brains are plugged into a simulated reality, but our very existence and consciousness itself are just threads running in some futuristic simulation. We are just programs, and our experience, life as such, is just programs. And the headline that came out of it was Elon Musk says that we are probably living in a simulation, which is clickbaity, sensationalistic headline, but his rationale for it, because he never answered the question. He never said, yes, I believe we live in a simulation. He went through a far-fetched way, because clearly he's thought about this for a long time. He said that if you look 40 years ago, just 40 years ago, at Pong and the advancement of video games from Pong to today, and you assume any level, doesn't have to be logarithmic, doesn't have to be exponential, of advancement. There are other 2 options. One, that civilization any civilization never reaches a point where computation will get powerful enough, or 3 options. 1, that civilization gets advanced, but they have no interest in making simulations. 2, civilizations never get far enough that they reach that, like the Fermi paradox. No civilization can, once they get to a sufficient technological point, they destroy themselves inevitably. Or 3, a civilization endures and they do improve computation. And at that point, it's inevitable that they create simulations that can be as complex as our reality. And so he says there is a based on whatever his, backseat physicist and philosophy degrees, he says there's a 1 in billions chance that we are in a base reality, that we are in a real reality, given these assumptions.
1 in a billion.
1 in billions.
1 in billions.
That we are in a real reality, that we are in a base reality, that it's more likely than not, because progress exists, that we are in a simulation. Even without saying, I believe we're in a simulation.
But progress does not exist with infinite time. I don't want to, you're right, because there's a beginning to the universe, a beginning to our planet, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as we know it in our simulation.
As we know it, exactly.
So you're saying.
Even progress itself.
Potentially.
The argument, Ouroboros, it eats itself up. Because even his context for progress, if he's saying, would be then in the context of a simulation.
As one friend put it to me, is let's say you believe that artificial intelligence as we know it now can progress to the point where it can create something incredibly believable and realistic and human even, let's just say. Well, do you believe that AI can progress to the point where it builds an AI capable of building that experience as well? And if that's the case, then you can start to see how a simulation is very possible.
Right.
It like breaks your brain.
Yeah.
And it also kind of doesn't matter on some level.
100% doesn't matter.
So it shouldn't affect how we live our lives.
No, because either our lives have meaning or they have, these are like they're philosophical ramifications and things like it really doesn't matter. Acknowledging you're in a simulation matters. You can't prove it. There's no way to prove it either way. But anyway, I thought that was the most widespread part of the conversation.
What I also think is fascinating is Elon's talked a lot about AI in the past, and he's really worried about AI being used for bad. He's donated a lot of his own money to make sure we do research on beneficial AI or keeping AI beneficial to humanity. So I'm sure it's just a topic that resides in his head.
That was another topic that they circulated, was a question about AI. I guess he started his own AI company, a not-for-profit called, is it OpenAI or something like that? But that was the headline, is that he's scared of one company, but he won't say which, that's developing AI.
It's probably Google.
Could be. I mean, certainly they're at the front, but he doesn't want, AI to become the dominant species on the planet.
Right. And so he says, I think the other soundbite that came out of this is, his fear of AI. He thinks the logical future is that we're integrated with AI. There is some cyborg path, and supposedly letting AI supplant humanity, AI and humanity merge together in one way, in which we are, to some extent, that's a human-computer interaction. Again, we are using the very simplest interactions with touch and our 5 senses, but he posits ways that we could tap into our neurology with through the blood.
I think it's more fascinating to think that we could reach a point where the differences between those two paradigms we talked about, humanity and the technology, just that line starts to blur. That we're able to sort of digitize ourselves in some way.
That's what I want. I want to reach that point before
you're done living on this plane.
No. I'm saying that's how I want to go out. When I'm going to die, I want to be uploaded into a system. I want to be,
that was the dream. That was the invention of the holodeck.
I want to be digitally, like, cryogenically frozen. And then I just want to exist on the PC.
Which pinball game do you want to be uploaded into?
They'll have them all. It'll be great. I mean, I honestly, like, everyone in my family knows that's how I want to go. I think that would be fantastic.
I was surprised to hear Elon so down on Google, because he did take shots of them around the AI, but then he also kind of dismissed them as a competitor in the autonomous car realm too.
Did he?
Yeah, he basically said that he saw Google as just a licensor. They're never going to be a car company. So he never sees them as a competitor to Tesla.
In the same way that what they do with Android?
Yeah, exactly. But he's much more concerned about Apple entering the market because they are a hardware manufacturer.
He also said that he thinks they're a little late to the game and that everyone else is going to just be generations ahead of them by the time they get to market.
Oh, well, I think he's right about that. I mean, Apple does feel late to market right now.
If they hit 2020 with their car.
Yeah, if Tesla 3 actually comes out and is a massive hit like it is poised to be, how do you derail that quickly if you're Apple?
Well, and also going back to you wanting your mind to be uploaded to the computer. In Star Trek, it was Richard Daystrom who did that in the original series episode, The Ultimate Computer.
Oh, is this the founding of the Daystrom Institute?
The Daystrom Institute, and he was the one who developed the multi-tronic computer system to create a successful artificial intelligence, which was the one that was the precursor to the Star Trek computer, the talking computer voice. And in Star Trek lore, the idea of putting his personality and his head into his personality engram, into the computer was the foundation of holodeck characters, which then have personalities and memories and sustainable themselves. But again, even in the Star Trek universe, they never had people fully transfer their consciousness into a computer because even your holodeck simulations were superficial.
Well, what about Moriarty then?
Moriarty was generated by the computer itself.
Yeah, but would you say that was an artificial life that seemed to live a happy...
Well, was Data any less so?
Oh, the measure of a man. What is the measure of a man?
There was also a question that someone asked him, I think it was Kara Swisher, about what is the best... No, it was an audience member. That's what is the best form of government for the first colony on Mars.
Yeah.
And he said a direct democracy. The fact that he's thought about all this stuff, and he runs these amazing companies.
That's why I said we could do an entire podcast just on the musings of Elon Musk. But he talks about direct democracy with a very specific requirement.
But the laws.
Yes, exactly. That it should be, easy to create laws.
He wants a sunset clause.
Yes, but also laws need to be reevaluated.
Right, so that they automatically expire unless they can be revoted in. He doesn't like that laws live forever.
Right.
He said they should be easier to destroy than they should be to create.
I wonder if there were just philosophers and political scientists and sociologists just pulling their hair out, listening to this tech billionaire get all this attention
with his little shower thoughts.
Shower thoughts. Shower thoughts are a big deal. I admit I've only thought about doing this probably in the shower. But while having a shower thought, I thought, why don't I have a notepad in the shower to jot down my shower thought? And it was a thought I had in the shower. And of course, being a shower thought, never got a chance to do it.
You guys don't do this? I actually use voice in the shower. So I'll talk to Google and activate it while I'm in the shower to take notes.
So you have your phone in the room?
Yeah, I have my phone because usually I listen to podcasts or morning news while I'm in there, and we just have a Bluetooth speaker in there, and so I'll voice direct it. You guys don't do that? I don't
bring my electronics into the bathroom just because I'm afraid of the humidity affecting them. It's probably a silly fear.
Well, you can use one of those Logitech the UE rolls. They're waterproof speakers.
Yeah,
and they have speakers.
It would be smart. I mean, if there was a shower radio that also had Alexa built into it, absolutely.
That's on Amazon to make, or someone else to. Yeah. But I want a physical thing. I want something that I want to type up my notes, because voice. When you go back and listen to any of your voice memos,
I actually look at it.
They don't index well.
They don't index well, but the Google's voice recognition is pretty good, so it does keyword tag for me.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're using the AI, using a dictation.
I use it to set up my day. I basically dictate stuff that I have to remember to do. I make a to-do list for myself, and then I look at that later in the day.
You can use if this then that to transfer your, a to-do list and shopping list to other, online tools.
All right. Elon's shower thoughts. That's the name of this episode. Done. I like it. Some other tech news. Are we done with talking about Elon's shower thoughts?
Unfortunately.
I know. He has so many.
Got to get him on the show.
Yeah. Well, what else do you say about Mars?
When are they planning a mission to Mars? Or when are they hoping to have?
He wants to put humans on Mars by 2025.
In 9 years. 9 years, right?
Yeah. Wow. It's also freaky to say that 2025.
So they'll start sending gear ahead of time. So it's
And
before that.
most people, when dissecting those comments, had two things to say. Like some people said, like, "Oh, he did not directly say that we will land on Mars. That he left room for like it just to be like some sort of orbiting component, which is just a whole different ballgame."
A manned orbiting component?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
Crewed orbiting mission. But most of the space journalists that I've read on the topic have said that this is way aggressive for so many reasons, because there is huge components of technology that have not been addressed. Everything from like cosmic rays affecting electronics to humans, and designing systems that are going to absorb that radiation to not affect it, let alone just some of the logistics of launching to that place. I mean, we're getting there with the heavy rockets that are going up. We talked about the Delta IV, which is not a SpaceX rocket, but a different company. And then the Falcon 9 will be out, the Falcon version of that will be out soon. So we're making progress towards it, but 9 years feels really aggressive.
But he's not someone who shies away from aggressive timelines either, right? I mean, I feel like autopilot, on the smaller scale, on the terrestrial scale, is a little bit,
but
accelerated.
But the technology for it, the LiDAR, had existed for a long period of time.
Right.
And in this case, we don't have technology that is proven effective at absorbing the radiation.
Got it.
So he says he also might go up in the orbit in 4 to 5 years.
Oh, he might.
He might. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a question asked of him. Why haven't you gone?
Wow.
I think he wants to die on Mars.
Do you get the sense that he might know something like cataclysmic is going to happen that he hasn't told anyone else about? Like he knows the moon is going to blow up or something?
If he's someone who genuinely believes that life is just a simulation, then he wants the high score. Then he wants to believe that he's the hero. If life is, it's basically like intelligent design that he's believing in, and he wants to believe that he wants to be the chosen one.
Well, he would be a good leader
of Mars
for the Mars colony. He would.
He would make sure those laws were sunsetted.
I'd follow him in the battle.
I don't know if you'd follow him to Mars though. Not much space in those Dragon capsules. All right, actually on to real technology news. Now, we talked about Alexa a little bit, and one question we've had, and Google is releasing its Alexa competitor this year. It's the Google Home. What's the device called? But anyway, it's not going to be under the Nest brand. And Nest actually had its founder, Tony Fadell, the inventor of the iPod, step down this week.
This has been in the works for a while. It feels like we've been hearing bad news out of Nest in terms of employees being unhappy there and unhappy with the environment, that the merge with Google culture hasn't gone well.
Yeah. I mean, I've read bad things from Google about it, that Nest just never embraced the company.
So our second, Ron from ours, who covers the Android beat, had a story about just like what a disaster Nest has been if you look at what has happened since Google bought them. When Google bought Nest, that was before there was the big recall on their thermostat, or not the thermostat, the smoke detector, the CO2 detector. And then also since then, they really haven't released a bunch of new products at all. Mm-hmm. Like they kind of missed the boat on this integration with Google Now, and Google Home being slated for release later this year. Doesn't seem like it was really born out of that Nest DNA.
They've iterated the thermostat a couple times. They've released a new one every year or two.
But it's not world changing.
No.
Yeah. And with the kind of resources, and you would hope the power that you have at Google's disposal, with just the finances and the leeway to do all these projects, that Nest should have been bigger now. So Nest isn't going away. It's just Tony Fadell leaving to do other projects, much like Andy Rubin did when he left Android, which some people saw that as a firing as opposed to a voluntary stepping down. New CEO will head up Nest, and I want to see good products come out of it.
I think what you're going to see is Nest get sold off.
You think so?
Yeah, because the new CEO, Marwan Fawaz, so his previous job within Google, he sold off the Motorola home business to Aris. So he has a history of coming into these acquisitions and turning them around in order to sell them.
Now, what would be disappointing is if Google saw no interest in Nest, because in Nest, again, they also bought Dropcam, which then those employees left, is because Google saw no business in the collection of that information, or if Google only wants to collect information, and they saw that Nest wasn't doing that, because. Like, why is Google making Google Home? Because they want more people to use Google now. They want to collect that data because they're in the business not of selling hardware devices. They're in the business of selling ads.
I mean, everything that Google's been signaling in their moves, this alphabet reorganization, what we talked about Boston Dynamics last year, being up for sale a couple weeks ago, they seem to be focusing. And so if they're driving a lot more focus, like where does Nest fit in there? It doesn't seem like it does to me.
I don't know. I mean, it's a good product line. I mean, they make good products. I have their thermostat and it works flawlessly. I'm very happy with it. There was clearly a link when Google bought them. It made sense that they wanted to be involved in the smart home market. I just imagine that the leadership in Nest just wasn't compatible with what Google wanted to do. Maybe they were focused on their own priorities and they didn't want to incorporate the mothership's priorities. Mm-hmm. Maybe a new CEO can do that.
Now, would you have any interest in Nest products as an ecosystem if they did not tie in to those big services, Google Now, Amazon Alexa, Apple Siri, Microsoft Cortana?
I mean, I don't know what that would mean. Like it could, if my Nest thermostat maybe could respond to voice commands, that would be interesting if they could incorporate that.
You're happy with this a smart home system that's
so far
works by itself.
Most smart home systems are like that. Then they have these like if this then that has emerged as like the great shoelace that ties everything together. And it's going to be interesting to see what the command center looks like for all of these devices. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's necessarily gonna it's on Nest to be that, or it might be on Google, but I don't think it's going to be any of the Nest devices.
I have a hard time seeing this because the thermostat is not a product that I change that much. Mm-hmm. And so it's not something that I interact with a lot. So having it be smart has diminishing returns to me. And so when I think about what are the things I use a lot in my home that would benefit from it, like some sort of smart integration, I would say like thermostat, the smoke detector that they used, I think are relatively low on the risk, even though they have high return to me. Well,
there are a lot of we're talking about appliances, right? Like thermostats, refrigerators, and we poo-pooed a lot of these smart devices in that category. Nest less so because of the design. Like the benefit was there was the smart functionality behind it actually worked.
It worked.
And it was nice design. But all of these appliances seem to be no-brainer access points for the essential services that we didn't have 10 years ago, that we didn't have 5 years ago, these AI services. And it seems really smart of any company to be making both the service or the hardware to meld the two. The Amazon Alexa being a standalone device works now because you need the omnidirectional speaker. But if that was built into the thermostat hub, if it was built into the thing that you already have in every other room in your house, or the appliance you have in the middle of your kitchen, then doesn't that seem to be the smart way to move forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, smoke detectors are probably a better example of that because you don't have more than one thermostat on the floor.
Right. So the smoke detector being your vocal access point to your Now or your Alexa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we've left the shower thoughts section of this podcast.
It's all shower thoughts. Every episode. That's the surprise for every episode. Speaking of more Google endeavors, I know, Jeremy, you were a big fan of watching Google's AlphaGo.
Yeah. I mean, it was fascinating.
AlphaGo, their AI, the Go player, beat Lee Sedol.
Yeah.
Well, that was only Korean Grandmaster Lee Sedol.
That's a big deal.
It was a big deal. Ooh, I apologize for the cues.
He was one of the top ranked players in the entire world.
That's right. But he's not the top ranked player. And so Google AlphaGo has and its avatar, its human avatar player, has bigger fish to fry.
You're kidding.
And so I think it's going to take on the 18-year-old Chinese Go champion,
Really?
Qi Keje, at the 37th World Amateur Go Championship this weekend. They revealed that AlphaGo will set up a match before the end of the year with the Go champion of the world.
Great. But this is no contest, right? And there's no money on the Chinese champion at this point, is there? I mean,
you think it's AlphaGo all the way?
AlphaGo improved its game dramatically by all accounts. I mean, what do I know? But everyone said that between the match prior to this, to the Lee Sedol match and the Lee Sedol match, AlphaGo's strategy and competency improved quite dramatically. So they had obviously added some tweaks. So now there's going to be quite a amount of time between this already amazing match with another player of the same rank.
The same rank, ninth Dan.
So
Don, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think there's any money on him.
Well, Google has not committed AlphaGo 100%.
Of what? Really?
It's really the player who's put the challenge out.
Oh,
and
well,
so
I don't.
This feels more and more like a boxing match.
I think AlphaGo's.
Are they gonna have the pre-conference like with Smack Talk, the weigh-in, where they talk smack to each other?
Well, the AlphaGo would need its avatar to do it for it.
Oh, that would be great if it brings out that human guy that has to do the moves.
Yes, the player. Yes. We'll be following that. Now, as AI gets smart, you talked about Elon being afraid of AI. There was also a report that Google has developed a kill switch for its AI and services to prevent, the headlines say, the AI uprising. Now, it's got to be a little more practical than that.
It hasn't developed it. It's the team is thinking on this and working on it, and they're working on a framework that would basically interrupt the AI's ability to keep learning.
Wow.
And so you can't, it's not a kill switch per se. It's a
dumb it down switch.
Yeah. Basically it'll stop its progression.
Are there ethical concerns about this?
That's what I was thinking.
Because when you put in those terms, it's like a lobotomy.
Right.
A switch that you say.
Yeah. It's a lobotomy on a light switch.
What if the AI gets to a point where it can understand what's happening to it?
Yes, exactly. And then lobotomize itself. Like take out that piece of interruptive code.
Right. Or actually with interruptive code would have negative effects on the AI in some measurable sense.
If it's already at the point
These are all shower thoughts, by the way.
If it's at the point where we're shutting that off, if we're turning off its ability to learn, hasn't it already learned too much? I mean, how do we know when to flip that switch? Kishore?
I have no answer to that. I don't think that's an answerable question. I think for you to consider it, for us to talk about it as if there's some red button that gets hit, is probably not realistic.
You think it's a Linux command?
No, but what I actually think is interesting about this is consider what they're trying to do. They're trying to basically interrupt a learning algorithm that this artificial intelligence has. Mm-hmm. I think that has applicability outside of these ramifications that we're talking about, of actually stopping cascading processes going forward when we start to have more learning algorithms just move. I mean, forget artificial intelligence and this sort of sci-fi notion that it's going to do some harm to us. Like in a system, could this sort of interruptibility be in just an interesting research arena? Okay, that's what I said to myself to make myself feel better. Now back to your question, because I think it's I have no idea how you would actually introduce this, make the decision that this has to actually go into place.
Once AI is legally considered sentient, I think this kind of thing would be illegal.
Illegal.
Yeah, illegal. Yeah.
So what is there would be qualitative or quantitative measure of sentience for an AI?
Yeah.
And would an AI benefit more likely benefit from hiding those measures of sentience at that point?
What is sentient? How do you measure that?
That's right.
Like, does it have to basically have the same functional capability as a baby in terms of processing capability and ability to learn from
Voight comp? Come on, it's just a Blade Runner test.
Yeah, I think people are overwhelmingly compassionate, and it probably won't take much for an AI to prove that it's sentient.
Well, people may be less forgiving of AI once they realize what obnoxious drivers Google's AI cars are.
Nice.
In this past month's Google self-driving report, which you can download and read, it's a regular update that Google provides on its self-driving car initiative. These are the bubble cars that they showed off last year. The prototype bubble cars now have internal horns that Google is training the cars to politely honk at other distracted drivers.
What does politely honk mean? Is it the little like beep?
It's got to do two.
It can do two. It can do. There are different types of honking scenarios. No rage honking, but 2 short beeps.
Yeah.
1 short beep. They're not external horns right now, so it doesn't even have the capacity to sort of blast out into the world.
Wait, so what do you mean? You mean it just goes into the cabin?
I think.
What?
Yeah. The prototype bubble cars.
That makes so little sense. Why doesn't it blast out in the world?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right.
It's because the honking system was not was not thought of to be used this way when the prototype cars were first made. So they will have the external horns later, but they need their honking algorithms to be improved, and then they've broadcast the horn out in the world.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
If I want to program that honking algorithm, that sounds fun.
I kind of like this. You know how much safer that would make the roads if they were able to honk at distracted drivers?
Totally.
Can you what is the can you as you're driving, can you tell the difference between a patient honking driver and a obnoxious honking driver? It's a subtle difference.
Oh,
sometimes.
I don't think it's that subtle.
You think it's just a long horn? Are honks, are they analog? Is it like the harder you push, the harder? It's not.
No,
it's
it's not
on.
dude.
Yeah.
Not my car.
They should be analog.
That would be interesting. I like that. I mean, it is like you got to find how quickly can you press it to get the analog sensation, you know? I got to say, though, honking at all in certain parts of the country is seen as taboo. I mean, like when my brother came to visit and I honked at somebody on the freeway, he said, "Did you just honk at somebody?" Like he just doesn't honk.
Well, why the cars have it then in those countries?
Yeah. See, I should have said that. That's the perfect response.
What do you use your car horn for?
Right.
I'm not quick enough to the horn. I gotta.
Oh, really?
That's my problem. I gotta use the horn.
It always
more.
feels like a little bit of a last resort.
Yeah, but I feel like there's other countries I've been to where they use the horn in a much more utilitarian way, as opposed to like express like anger, which is largely how it's used.
What if the cars develop their own language with the horns?
That'd be great.
The low frequency soft horns, and the cars are just talking to each other as they're driving, and no one's the wiser.
You know, it should be more complicated. Than
Yeah,
that. We are stuck on the horn just because of nostalgia.
Shower thoughts, 2016.
There was other car news. I guess I didn't read that this actually happened, but apparently a Tesla automobile hit a building. Did you read about that?
Self-driving car?
Not well. Yeah, it was like autopilot, and apparently Tesla looked at the driving logs and they revealed that the driver actually hit the gas, so it wasn't the autopilot that hit the building. It's interesting though that they have that. In their defense,
They have the logs.
They have logs of everything that you do in that car.
I mean, the black box, right? The car should have a black box.
Exactly.
Now the question is whether they have the God view for the car or for Tesla to pull the information as the cars are driving, whether that's being beamed up to their servers.
Oh, you mean the camera stuff? Like the view of their surroundings?
And also just the driving data.
Yeah.
Like, is that being sent up as you're driving, or is that only retrievable after the fact locally?
Do you have any concerns about it from a privacy perspective? Them logging that kind of information, or cars in general logging that kind of information?
Absolutely. I mean, even a server, yes. And like Google does that with your phone. Most people don't even know. But once you tell them, hey, you can track exactly where you've been and what Wi-Fi and cellular points you've connected to and track your movements, there's useful ways to implement that. And Google says that they don't consciously know what that is. It's stored there, but it's all encrypted. But these are just companies run by people.
Yeah, if you're concerned about privacy today, it's exhausting. I mean,
Jeremy's just given up.
So I just try to live smart, and I maybe one day I'll pay the price for it. But I have just given in to Big Brother.
Well, I love the idea of this from the idea of accidents and stuff right now. Having more detailed information about what actually happens that's more impartial would probably make the whole processing and insurance issue much simpler than it is now, because assessing fault would rely on some measure of data. But
Now, are you in favor?
There could be manipulation or data whose interpretation is up for debate.
Are you also in favor of trying to catch people lying in the act? Give them the user report first, and then show them what actually happened, and then doubling the fines.
I listened to a different podcast where a guy was talking about catching somebody on the nanny cam they have. They've caught his cleaners like basically doing like theft in their house, and then confronted the cleaner with the video information, which is exactly what you're talking about, right?
I mean, from a policy's perspective, it's just like cop cams, right? Police cameras. There's a debate about whether the police officer, when filing the report, should be allowed to review the footage before filing the report, and whether that changes the report, or whether like it's entrapment, or if you don't let the police officer, and then it's a lot like.
I'm a big believer in our memory is fragile, and there's a lot of neuroscience that points to that. So
there's a whole podcast about that called Serial.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, but it's, at the same time, if the police view the video, then they can know what they can and cannot say that isn't true.
I mean, does it make more sense to just acknowledge we have the video?
Yeah.
For the best of your memory, we know there's documented record. Maybe you don't get to watch it, but to the best of your memory, what happened, and then compare and then accept the fact that memory is fragile, but them knowing that there was something documented maybe would prevent any falsifying.
I like that.
Of the, I mean, these are all complicated things. And now we're off tangent.
No, we're just back in the shower.
Back. Yes.
We are fully on tangent now.
Oh man, I wish we could go back retroactively and rename the podcast to Shower Thoughts.
You can't? Aren't you all powerful?
No.
Oh boy.
Had to have the back out. All right. Before we jump into our next segment, or more our last bit of tech news, I do also want to thank the other sponsor of this week's podcast, and that sponsor is Atlassian. Atlassian, today nearly anything is possible, and if we can dream it, teams can build it. So how do you bring everyone together to create what's next? You can team up with Atlassian, makers of collaboration software that lets teams work together and communicate better. You can assign, track, manage tasks for any project, no matter how complex. That's the clarity of Jira. Create and share content, organize results, and bring team members up to speed. That's the flexibility of Confluence. And instant message, video chat your team from any device with HipChat, or test and review and manage code with Bitbucket. So visit Atlassian.com and you can check them out. That's Atlassian.com. They help teams everywhere to team up and create what's next. Thank them for sponsoring this week's episode of This Is Only a Test. All right, last quick bits of tech news, because I know we want to jump into the Science Minute. Netflix is really, really curious about your internet speed and the quality of your internet service. They have that website that you can check your internet speeds to compare to what, because they want to not take the blame for when your image quality isn't great. They've also now developed a real world video quality tool that can evaluate your perceived video quality of your streams.
How does this work?
Very good question. So it gauges the visual fidelity. I think it does like screenshots, and then looks at like tearing and motion and pixelization. So it's almost like a critique of compression algorithm.
So it's software that runs on your computer?
It's open source code, and it's going to let companies test their encoding practices, basically, and tune their encoding so that for certain amounts of bitrate that they know their customers are getting, that you're going to get better streaming quality.
So Netflix will have the information about the speeds already, which they already have, and they can combine that with this information.
Exactly. E3 is next week, but there's also some Microsoft Xbox One news. Cortana is coming to Xbox One this summer as part of the Whoa.
Is that Cortana?
That was not Cortana. That was something else. And that's part of the Windows 10 anniversary update. What do you guys think about this?
Oh, I don't care.
Don't care?
I'm always curious about personal assistants, but I haven't heard anything to lead me to believe that Cortana is the one.
She's not the one for you?
So the Xbox voice commands that were integrated before, I always thought that was Cortana.
I don't think they had actually called that Cortana, and there was a pretty light, and I think those are also hard. I'm not sure if they're hard coded in, but I think they're maybe just bringing it all under the umbrella of Cortana. So you can turn on your Xbox, Hey Cortana, Xbox on, and so you get the Hey Cortana prompt.
So it seems like they're just merging something that was already, the functionality that was there, just under another umbrella.
Yep.
Does all of that use the same voice actor or based on the same voice as the voice actor from Halo?
I think so.
It is.
It must. I mean, that's the big selling point.
Yeah.
Right. Again, not a big user of Cortana. Valve announced some sales numbers for the Steam controllers. They said about 500,000 Steam controllers, and they also did a sale. I think it was like $35 for the Steam controllers, it's a totally reasonable price. I don't think it's the end all solution for gaming on the couch, and mouse and keyboard still work better for a lot of games. There are actually PC games out that require a gamepad. Do you hear about this? There's a PC game out that was released recently
that requires a Steam controller?
It requires a gamepad that you cannot play with a keyboard and mouse on PC. Is that bizarre?
That's totally weird.
But only 500,000. I say only because that's not a breakout hit number. And especially when you're talking about every Steam machine included a Steam controller. So that tells you at most 500,000 Steam machines are out there.
Well, a lot of people already had gamepads, though.
Yes, true. But Steam Machine as a platform, there were a ton of hardware partners when they first launched. It really hasn't taken off.
I got to say, I have not used mine very much at all.
So, you're talking about the Steam Link.
I'm talking about the Steam Link, and that's the only reason I would use.
But Steam Link is different. Steam Machine is
I know.
the Linux self-contained computer.
Yeah, but for that, anyone can just use a standard gamepad. I mean, there's no reason why you probably wouldn't. Why would you use a Steam controller unless the game didn't support gamepad?
Well, a Steam controller is much more customizable than most gamepads.
Absolutely.
And also better to simulate mouse movements.
That's it. Like, it's for mouse movements.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not playing those kind of games on the couch.
Yeah. And it feels like a trackball. Some people really like that kind of trackball feel. You get the acceleration. There are a lot of games that benefit from that, even though they support gamepads.
I mean, the controller is just not much of a risk, especially at $35.
No.
That's cheaper than any other gamepad. So,
and they have been making improvements since it's been out. So if you got it when it first came out, it's worth revisiting just to see how well it's streamlined.
I do like having the option.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read about the computer that watched Blade Runner?
I did read about that. Yeah. So why don't you explain this?
Well, all I know is that the computer watched Blade Runner, and then they put the computer vision footage up online, and it got DMCA takedown because it looked enough like Blade Runner for the other computer to think that it was Blade Runner.
So you like the meta story of
it's funny.
The copy protection AI taking down another computer's visual input
about a movie about
in a science experiment in a experiment
about AI.
Yeah, I like the idea that one computer was just trolling the other.
But the computer vision footage is stunning. It's up on Vimeo. They actually have the whole movie up there. It looks like a Minority Report Visions kind of footage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful. It's like if it was just like a way to encode movies, it would be quite.
But that's just a visualization.
Yeah.
Like, how does that actually translate to what the computer system is actually ingesting and how it processes that information? You don't get that from watching a 16:9 screen.
Yeah.
Like, what do these things mean? Like, okay, it's skewing this area and combining these. Like, what does that mean?
You'll never know until you're uploaded into it yourself.
And then I won't feel it. I just know it. All right, and one last bit, which won't be relevant to Kishore, you and me doing some traveling next week, but Wi-Fi on airplanes, GoGo has like a big monopoly right now, but Boeing 737 MAX planes have a new deal with a company called Viasat, and they promise streaming quality connections, streaming capable connections.
So hallelujah. And it's not so much about the streaming for me as it is about GoGo having a competitor in the marketplace, because Wi-Fi on airplanes sucks right now.
Yep.
And I understand how complicated it is, but I feel like the competition is going to lead to better service and, more importantly, better pricing, because it's gotten out of control how expensive it is.
Well, they work through two different ways. So the current Wi-Fi with like a service like GoGo builds out underneath the airplane's flight path stations that send the signal up, and then on the bottom of the airplanes you have receivers and transmitters that pipe down to the ground. And so their technology is a seamless integration as your plane is flying over to pass off the connections, which makes sense for why video and streaming isn't just really practical aside from bandwidth considerations, because they're all sharing this limited bandwidth. And they've improved it over time. With Viasat, it's through satellite connections. And so it's to some extent, it's almost like your DirecTV and landline competitor.
But it doesn't rely on the airline taking a path that's predetermined, because they often have to go around clouds and storms.
That's right.
But it is dependent on the number of satellites they have available to provide this. So I think there's something about them launching another satellite in the next couple of years in order to increase service. I don't know. I'm just happy there's a competitor, so we might actually see better service there. It doesn't bug me that I can't stream, that I can't do like Netflix and audio streaming on airplanes.
You just want what you have to be consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You got to remember the Louis C.K. bit, though, about how entitled are we to expect this to work. We didn't even know it existed 5 minutes ago.
That's right. Chair in the sky.
Yeah.
It's terrifying chair in the sky. All right. And I guess that's it for technology news. Sure, it really is now time for. Oh, I don't have the intro. I don't have the music again.
Wait, did it get sucked into the ether?
No, it's on my other computer.
All right, Jeremy, you're on.
A moment of science.
A moment of science.
I'm bringing Jeremy around with me everywhere. Let's talk about snail brains. Snails are stupid, right?
Right.
Am I right, guys?
They're the dumbest.
They make some
so
great
dumb.
decisions.
They're so stupid.
Salt.
Slow.
There's some researchers that have been looking at snail brains because they have a really simple brain system that they have. They basically have a neuron that really looks for food and tells them how close that food is. One that tells them how close food is, and one if it's hungry. And they're able to actually perform pretty complex tasks like find food using this system. And this sort of complex processes arising from a very simple system is really interesting to robot manufacturers and robot designers about designing complexity from very simple systems. So there was a new paper that came out from the University of Sussex about this week that really points to creating sort of robotic brains, if you will. This methodology of using these simple systems aggregated up to give rise to complexity might be a way to go. And it also increases overall efficiency if you can do it this way.
So snail AI is really cutting edge right now.
Very much so. There's a group at Harvard that developed something called these kilobots. There are these swarming robots that only basically had somewhere between 3 and 9 degrees of freedom on each one. They could like color code in different lights, but when you got 1,000 of them together, they could perform reasonably complex interactions. And my favorite thing, and there's a time lapse of this, is you can watch them swarm together and mimic the motion of a starfish.
Wow. Biomimicry.
Using that simple set of commands each one has.
Without a central intelligence.
No, there's in this case with the kilobots, there's a central intelligence telling them to behave in a certain way, but that gives rise to the complex behavior.
The future is just a swarm of kilobots mimicking starfish, making decisions of whether to eat, and then shining the light from their butts.
Norm is going to be the omniscient shower thought narrator for the rest of the segment.
Hey Siri, take this one down.
That should be the audio cue. Hey Siri, I got another one.
If you use the second hey, it knows to file it in that area where you can't reach it.
Right. And all we need is Apple and Google to have some shower canceling, noise canceling software.
There's Siri just on cue.
Damn it.
So the last couple of weeks we've talked about Beam, which is the Bigelow inflation module that's aboard the ISS. And last week we talked about it being successfully inflated, though we mentioned something incorrect, that we thought the astronauts were going to go in spacesuits. They are not. And in fact, Jeff Williams, who's aboard the ISS right now, went into the Bigelow module
Unprotected.
Yeah, just him.
Wow.
And he was taking air samples, and they're going to be measuring for sort of radiation. He didn't spend an extended period of time in there, but he went in there to sample, and by all accounts, things are going well right now. They're going to be looking at radiation exposure in their air quality, and then just everything else you can expect for them to monitor over time, like consistent air pressure. If there's any sort of environmental factors like micrometeorites, which you brought up last year, they're going to cause any sort of damage to the module. And general sort of living conditions, like if there's any sort of buildup of any gases in there.
My 9-year-old did a current event for his class this morning on Beam. You would have been very proud of him.
I think you should be proud of him too.
I am. No, I am. I am. I was, but you weren't until now.
Okay. Yeah. I'm very proud of him too. That's awesome. They have a current science news event thing. Something that's been covered a lot in media that we should just mention. The King Tut meteorite. Do any of you guys watch DC's Legends of Tomorrow?
What?
Yeah, that's a good reaction.
DC Comics or like Washington?
It's a show on the CW. It's on Thursday nights. It's show.
I'm aware of people who watch that show.
Yes. So, anyways, the lore of this spoiler is that a meteorite comes down in ancient Egypt, and Vandal Savage, who's this legendary DC villain, is basically endowed powers by this meteorite and like forges weapons that are infused with this meteorite's power.
He's a caveman and he lives forever.
Yeah, and so this has been a long trope in DC Comics that meteorites actually, affected weapons back in ancient Egypt.
Wow. And
scientists have long thought that this actually is true to a certain extent, that some of the metals and weapons forged in ancient Egypt were derived from or from meteorites, and now they have proof of that.
That's amazing.
They put one of King Tut's spears under X-ray fluoroscopy, and was able to tell that the specific type of iron and the alloys in there most likely came from a meteorite, because they match samples from meteorites in that time period.
And doesn't it predate smelting altogether?
Yes, like they didn't have that kind of technology to forge it.
That is so cool.
It is bizarre that's true.
The spear is a star rock.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
We are all made of stuff. So I think it's just really amazing to think that some ancient Egyptian stumbled across a meteorite and chiseled it out and forged a weapon from it. But it makes sense that the pharaoh would, I guess, get that weapon.
Yeah.
Sounds like something right out of a video game simulation.
It does. Do you imagine that they saw the meteorite land and that they went to it and then it became a holy thing? Or do you think that they just uncovered it?
I think this is a good question. I think it's if they found it, I think it depends on the density. I think they probably saw it, because if it's big enough to uncover and to forge into something, it has to be consequential
and not be burned up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and if it's that consequential, it's probably going to make a lot of noise.
Yeah, and fire.
I think the noise is actually going to be the more noticeable one. If you saw those dash cams from Chebelins in Russia, that was a pretty
documented history of this. It was
5,000 years ago,
but they had hieroglyphics and they had storytelling capabilities.
I guess so. I don't know.
They had storytelling technology.
I like the idea of them seeing it from the sky, though. It's more DC Comics that way.
Fits the narrative.
And last thing is that Mars is really close right now.
Is that right?
It's as close as it's going to be, as close as it's been in the last 10 years.
It's only 30 seconds away.
What are you talking? Oh
yeah. So it's visible by the naked eye. So. And
it always is at nighttime.
Yeah, but it's even more visible to the naked eye. Like you can see elements of Mars, even the coloration, without a telescope right now. But I encourage people, it's as close as it's going to get. This is a great time to go check out Mars. That's not applicable to everyone because it depends on where you live around the globe. But for most, I think this is a great time of year to go check out Mars. So find your local amateur astronomy group. There's some great sites out there that will connect you to local amateur astronomers and go look up at Mars.
There are, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, some great apps for finding stars in the app stores that were accelerometer and compass aware, and you point them at nighttime and they will tell you what that bright star is, what planet that is, help you find the constellations, show you beneath the horizon so you can see what's coming up and what's going down.
I remember Google Night Sky was one of the first apps I got on my first Google smartphone.
Yeah.
Took advantage of the accelerometer and I guess compass. All right. Is that it for the science, our moment of science?
That is it for a moment of science.
A moment of science.
That sounded like aperture science.
Oh no, what's going on? What's going on? It's all breaking down.
Low budget.
I know.
This simulation
we're a little
is
low budget today.
Could you imagine if,
breaking apart.
what was it, ESPN you were next to? If they had these issues?
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
I love these interstitials. I think that the theme music needs to be revisited now.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't know if the theme music is living up to the interstitials.
All right. I'm gonna reach out to because our theme music was also created by a fan, and it was done, I guess, almost 6 years ago now. I don't know. That might be too big of a change.
I know it's a huge change, but it's something to consider.
Something to think about in the shower. All right. E3 again in next week. So we expect a lot of VR hands-on demos and maybe news to come out. We'll talk about our hopes and fears in just a minute. But there has been software ongoing being released for both Steam VR, HTC Vive, and also on the Oculus platform. Most recently, on the Oculus side, Edge of Darkness finally has come out. This is a launch window title made by Insomniac Games, the third-person thriller set in the snow. It was one of the things they demoed early on last year, I guess, when they showed some of that full lineup. I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet.
Reviews are very high.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
9s out of 10s and that kind of thing.
Great.
However, I also saw some people say it made them sick. I haven't played it either. Does that make sense to you? I would think a third-person game would be kind of like Lucky's Tale, which is pretty smooth.
Well, Lucky Cell also made some people sick.
I suppose so.
Anytime you move that camera, some people, because the camera has to do some swings and some stuff. It's not like Chronos where you're teleporting your camera view.
To stationary
It's
positions.
tracking your person. Even games like Blaze Rush, some people find it, depending on how susceptible they are to
In your
motion
demos
sickness. of
of Age of Darkness, though, was it a
Age of
nauseating
Darkness.
experience?
No.
I'm sorry, Edge. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And they did the clever things like when you're climbing down a rope, it would so you look down and make it feel like you're inhabiting a larger space than your actual room. But can't wait to play that. On the Vive side, did you see that Star Wars lightsaber simulator?
Yeah.
Yeah, $4 lightsaber.
$4.
$4 lightsaber simulator.
What is the game? Is it basically just defend yourself from lasers?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't played it yet either, but it makes a lot of sense. Laser swords and sabers for the Vive controller. Now there was a thread for a Vive developer who's making a sword fighting game, and there was a YouTube video showing him demoing this sword fighting game. I don't think it actually has a name yet, and I found it really interesting because, like we've said on this podcast, I'm waiting for the perfect gladiator game in the Vive. Vanishing Realms gave you a taste of that. You love swinging the sword.
Did you get to the end of that game?
Still haven't gotten to the end.
You got to get to the end.
Okay. And you can hold it, you can hold shields, you can hold a sword. But the combat in Vanishing Realms, everyone plays it differently.
Yeah.
And whether you're playing against an enemy that's bigger than you or the same size as you, there's a lot of people just wiggle their wrists out and try to poke as opposed to doing actual slashes. And I think it's a thing that game developers are going to really have to address. Like when we played the Golem game, that's a PSVR motion controller game. We did that demo back at the GDC event. I was unimpressed because that one really required you to do heavy swings and really scripted movements, and wasn't very liberating as a sword fighting game. Now, also, that's not a game where I was walking around dodging like you do in room scale with the Vive. But this new sword fighting dev blog and this YouTube video, the developer specifically talks about how with the tracking system, they can know if you're wiggling just your wrist, or whether you're doing swings. Okay. And they've programmed so wrist wiggles and slashes are very ineffective, and that the way they just gate it, so you have to do a heavy swing or heavy thrust to actually do damage to the enemies, which is like a nice way to get around that's unrealistic or not very believable sword fighting.
That's gonna make you tired real quick.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
I don't think that's a problem either. I like that fitness is an automatic part of these games.
Absolutely. And for even when playing games like the raw data demo from Servios, when you're fighting against other enemies that have swords, you naturally hold your hand back. Your brain, again, does so much of the work when you want to believe. And it's true, you can break the illusion relatively easily if if you're swinging a sword against an enemy's sword and you don't stop your sword and you go all the way through, it doesn't, the hitboxes don't match up perfectly.
Right.
But the visual cues also tell your body to stop moving.
That's one of the things I was most impressed by of Vanishing Realms is their collision detection. Because obviously there is nothing to stop you from moving your sword through the enemy's shield into their body or through their helmet. But the designer took care to note what you hit first, so that if you do hit the shield, there's no way you can hurt the guy. Right. Even if you pass through it or move it up. So you have to back off. So it does force you to respect the fiction of the game.
And also it's something that, as sword fighting games become a thing for VR, there's gonna be character design. It's gonna be a huge thing because we're talking about enemies that for the most part are familiar shapes and sizes, and even character designs. They're holding a shield, they're holding a sword, they have two legs, but the hitboxes, you can do so many interesting things with weak points. Attacking. Think of all these great Japanese games, like sword fighting games and third person like slashing games, right? Hit that crab point for maximum damage, whatever that was, right? Like color coding where at the places you're supposed to hit, so it's going to acquire accuracy. All that stuff I'm looking forward to with the Vive.
Yeah, totally.
Or even combining it with pistols and swords.
Heck yeah.
Shooting the enemies to knock them back to expose the weak point and then hit it for massive damage.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Right?
Man. I mean, if the NX has VR capabilities, Nintendo's going to make some amazing VR experiences.
You saw a glimpse of that with the Wii. Like the first gen Wii games.
Sure.
What was that Ubi one?
I don't know. I mean, I think
the sword fighting one. But yeah.
Mario Galaxy is an amazing game, but it innovated all over the place.
You talk about Mario Galaxy in the Lucky's Tale style, where maybe...
Well, I was thinking with motion controllers. I think, I mean, there's so much innovation to be done there. I think that would just be a playground for them.
Yeah. Oh, it is all about putting more resources into it. There are big teams right now. Like there's that photo of the Crytek team who worked on the Climate. It's not 4 people working on that game. It's a lot of people. But it's still a chicken and egg scenario where you got to have more people who have the headsets. And then you got to have people who actually buy the games. It's an expensive headset right now, both of them, and the games aren't necessarily cheap. Edge of Darkness is $40, so you have to really treat it as a platform. And so, which is why I really don't like it when people say let's vote with your dollars and don't buy Edge of Darkness because you don't like Oculus's policy of exclusive games. Like they paid, I think it's fair to some extent that they paid for some of the development of those games and subsidizing those games, many of which would not exist, at least in this form, without
a larger base.
And so, support those games, support developers because they still need the money, right?
I mean, support games that I think you have confidence in are games that you're going to enjoy.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm all about reading the reviews before I plop down the money for some of these VR games.
Availability is still a concern for people who are thinking about buying these headsets, and HTC just put out a press release that they're now shipping within 72 hours.
Oh, new orders.
New orders. Wow. And they are popping up in Micro Centers and retail.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures of them popping up, but I mean, that makes sense now that they are caught up, essentially. it would make sense that they would hit retail.
Do you think we're still waiting for that killer app, waiting for an EA or a Valve to put out a $60 full-fledged VR game?
Well, I don't know if it matters how much it costs, but yeah, I mean, what we need is a demo system on both platforms. We need a way to be able to, shareware versions or whatever, what have you. I mean, that's what made Wolfenstein and Doom take off on the PC, is that everybody could try it for free. I think that's part of the equation that's missing right now. But yeah, I don't.
But that's a hardware problem.
Is it? I mean, I feel like that the stores could do it. I mean, they could do it with software, just release maybe a separate package, or I don't know, figure that out. But I don't know if the great first VR game has been released yet either.
For me, all the games I've played have been too short.
Yeah.
You don't like the repeatable experiences? You know, like going back in the Space Pirate Ninja, or I mean, even on the Oculus side, going back into Blaze Rush and playing multiplayer games over and over again.
Fine. I actually just want that. I want so much of why I bought into VR was that immersive story experience, and I haven't gotten that yet. I've gotten the good immersive physical experience. I haven't gotten the immersive emotional experience.
Could this game be getting into that territory?
Yeah, because it has horror components to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a really top game.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about these are the very, very first steps still, even though these are ostensibly in the VR space, AAA VR games. We are far away from Uncharted in VR and games that cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. That's still years away, but that's why I'm excited for E3.
Have you played the update to the lab yet?
Not yet. So the lab got updated this week that adds leaderboards and also changed a little bit the mechanics for 3 of the games, Slingshot, Longbow, and Zortex. Adding leaderboards to that, adding infinite play modes for Longbow. So
Infinite waves.
Yeah. Zortex, which I know is your favorite.
Every smart person would be.
How they change that?
I guess that they've also improved like just the progression. I haven't played it yet, but I'm looking forward to it because I do like that game. And I think they changed the super weapon, like the power up. I think they changed that laser beam to something else.
Yeah. I have found recently, because I do have a messy home, one of the reasons I am looking forward to PSVR is setting up, or maybe I just need to do this for my living room space, is to set up VR in a place that makes it super simple to jump in and out and not have to reset up. And
where's your Vive right now?
it's in my office and I have to move tables and chairs aside.
Oh yeah, that's no good.
Yeah.
You were the one with the VR room.
I need to actually set up the VR room. Now in practice, dedicating a full room of your house to VR is not a very practical thing to do.
Not in San Francisco.
Not in San Francisco.
Where's your Vive, Jeremy?
It's in my living room, so it's in front of my couch. So I had another 980, which was huge, and so I built a second PC for the Vive and put it in the living room.
And so you don't have to go through like that as long of a reset up process.
No, and it's great because you can mirror it to the TV so everybody else can watch.
Oh,
so it makes it social.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. So again, E3 next week, hoping to play some Oculus Touch games, hoping to play some new Vive games, and hoping to play a bunch of PSVR games. We're going down for a day and a half, almost all for VR stuff, and we'll have videos out later that week. So
can I ask one tangent question? Have you had better experiences with nausea over time now in VR?
No, I have my limit. Like, I think that I don't know if that's something I get over.
I'm really curious if we're going to start to see like plasticity start to take effect. Like if you're regimented, are you going to be able to adapt to this?
And it's long lasting. I mean, if I get motion sick, it's it for the rest of the day, pretty much. Like I just have this feeling of.
What are the things that get you most motion sick? Specific types of experiences.
Specifically, original Quake.
Well, that's not a game made for VR, though.
No, it's not. But that kind of like anything that it's the same old stuff. It's acceleration and deceleration that happen too quickly. It's lateral spinning that's instantaneous. It's all the things that they've learned to avoid for the first party titles.
I think this is a really interesting open question, just from a science perspective, but also when do you stop? Because I know there's sets of players that have been trying to just like, if I push through, is that better than if I stop instantaneously when I first feel it. And I think the general consensus has been to stop instantaneously as soon as you feel it. But I haven't seen any evidence to back any of this stuff up. I really wonder if like Norm's really going to be the guinea pig. He's been playing VR as long as anyone I know.
And I was very susceptible to motion sickness early.
Oh, and you're not now?
But I think the design of the game's been much better.
That's true. That's true. But like Will Smith never got motion sick.
That's right.
That's
he was able to play the original TF2.
Will Smith and John Carmack, they got something in common. That's it, though.
Yeah. All right. Well, they both work in the VR business.
That's true.
That's the other thing. That will do it for the VR minute. Hopefully, we got a podcast next week because we gotta recap E3. We'll figure out a time to do it. I know you'll be out of town, Kishore, but Jeremy, you and I will definitely have to find a time to do it.
E3?
Recap E3.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. And now our final segment.
Testing this week. Hey, what have you guys been testing?
Good question.
Well, I booted up Pool Nation VR on the recommendation of one of our listeners.
Okay.
And have you tried it yet?
No.
It's a interesting game I did not see coming. It's basically a pool hall that is it's very, very polished. It's a very finished game, and it was on the official Steam charts, like not just VR. So it's sold very well, and it's certainly worth checking out. It's got a really nice interface, and it's fascinating how they've approached the pool cue and how you would interact with that. It's not uncomplicated. I mean, you have to teleport to the right side of the table. You have to position your cue with the hand that lays on the table, and then you lock that down with a button, and then you can continue to move the backhand a little bit, and then you hit the ball as you would with a real pool cue.
Because you have no haptic feedback, how does that feel?
Well, actually, the haptics are some of the best I've felt.
Okay, so when you slide the cue up and down, it's like the longbow, you get the vibration.
It's really well done.
But you have no actual impact haptics.
No, and you don't have anything you're actually laying your hand on. So the fact that it locks down virtually, I didn't think would feel right, but it actually feels fine. And
So even the weight distribution being off doesn't bother you?
it's a good question, but it's one of those things that's like, wow, VR is really making some things happen here. And it's great. It needs great physics to work well. It does work well. It lets you cheat a little bit. Like you do see where the cue ball is going to go. Maybe you can turn that off in the options, but it's cool. And there's a dartboard, and you can go and throw darts, and you can get beers from behind the bar. There's people dancing, and there's a jukebox. It's multiplayer. So then that's the interesting aspect, is that it is like one of the first places to hang out.
So there's audio also in the multiplayer?
I believe so.
So you can use voice chat.
Does the Vive has mics?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't been able to convince anyone to play it with me yet.
I gotta play it with you.
Yeah, great. Let's do it.
We'll play it tonight. Kishore, anything you've been testing?
Nothing on my list this week.
All right, it's just hockey games, just the one hockey game.
Yeah, that's all I did this week is I went to one hockey game. That's it. No, I've just been busy with planning a conference.
I just got the Pocket Chip in. This is the Chip PC, $9 computer.
The one that you guys did the video on at Maker Faire.
That's right. And they sent me one. It's a $49, includes the chip. So it's like a $40 housing for a computer with a 40 by 270 touchscreen LCD. Has a full QWERTY keyboard and has I/O on top. So actually 420 by 272 LCD actually. And it runs a version of Linux. There's Pico 8 on it. So I played a few games on Pico 8. You can launch a web browser, download and launch a web browser. I'm not the most capable Linux user, but I'm going through the forums to find projects. But trying to get some software, because it has a 1 gigahertz processor and 512 megabytes of RAM. So there's no reason it couldn't run any MAME and Linux games. So
what have you played on it so far? Just
the Pico 8. There's the game they recommend. I forgot its name. It's like a platformer. Just a few minutes of that. But very excited.
I tested actually something else along those lines. The Raspberry Pi 3 finally came out of its box.
Oh, yeah.
And I installed RetroPie on it, which is a series of a collection of emulators all made to run very easily on the Raspberry Pi, including MAME. Now I tried MAME before on the Raspberry Pi 2, and I was disappointed with it.
With performance.
Right. You remember when we constructed my little MAME cabinet?
Yep.
We went with a Nuke, a little PC instead,
Full computer.
because MAME just was not running up to speed. But with the Pi 3, if you run the right one, if you run the MAME 2003 build, which has some sort of video acceleration, runs great. I'm very, very impressed. And plus, it's got embedded Wi-Fi now, which I completely forgot. So I put a little Wi-Fi dongle in there, and I was
you don't need it.
why am I not getting great performance? And just, took it out. Everything's great. But yeah, so that Raspberry Pi 3, big win.
Yeah, so if you were to build a small MAME cabinet, you would use the 3 and save a lot of money and not use the Nuke.
Depends how far up you want to go. But
And
yeah,
what type of emulation
if you're playing
would
80s
you?
games like I am, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It runs really well. I'm really, really impressed. I love having the embedded Wi-Fi on there.
Do you still play your MAME cabinet, your kit?
Yeah. In fact, it's great for my kids because I can introduce them to old arcade games very easily.
Oh,
And they now know how to turn it on and they can play it. And they're competing with 2-player games, which is perfect because it's turn taking as it used to be in the arcade. And so it teaches us, a little bit of patience and
Oh boy.
watching other people play, which is hard for.
It feels like going to the arcade
Yeah, it does.
because you have a little arcade.
My 6-year-old will kick your butt at Frogger.
Are they eventually going to discontinue the Pi 2 in favor of the Pi 3?
I don't know.
Because both are still on the market right now. right?
Yeah. I think the Pi 3 is a little more expensive though. It's $40. Isn't the Pi 2 less than that? If it's not, then they should discontinue it. But I'm going to say it is.
Yeah, so it's the same price. I want to say.
Are they the same price? That makes no sense.
Wait, let me see.
There's no reason to get the Pi 2 then.
Got to do the internet research at the end of the podcast. It's $40.
They're both $40.
$40 for Raspberry Pi 3.
Yeah, for 3 it's 40. But what about 2?
Oh, 35.
Okay, so there it is.
Yeah.
Save, there's a $5 difference.
Yeah, it's worth it buying the 3.
Yep.
Awesome. I think that's going to do it for us. We still have a lot more setup to do in this office and also gearing up for these upcoming trips, but a lot of more good content coming out this week. Those Strawn Beast videos should be already out by now by the time you listen to this podcast. Check that out. I got to meet Simone last week
Saw your
in
tweet.
person. She made it all the way to LA from Sweden for some meetings, and we'll have her hopefully in this office in the next couple weeks.
I guess you have a 2-week deadline to get this place in shape.
I know.
Otherwise, you're going to have
Very
some
embarrassing.
shitty robots come through here and
And help set up.
help set up.
Help set up.
I wouldn't trust them.
I'm looking very.
We're
forward
back
to
in the shower again, aren't we?
that. Yeah.
With that.
shower thoughts.
That's my secret. I'm always in the shower.
No. All right. Well, hopefully see you guys next week on the podcast. We'll be recapping E3, talking about some trips. And as always, we could use more outro audio files. Just go search in Google tested.com. Raw outro song is the keyword you want to search your Google. The first result should take you to the forums, and you can download the soundbite and create your own. Upload it to SoundCloud. Email me a link or post it in our forums, and we'll play it just like this one from AKA Gajba. He's created a bunch, and this one I haven't listened to yet, so let's check it out.
Rock the gash bar.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
I think he just talks whenever he wants and people listen. He is Stephen Hawking.
What was that from?
That was when Will had a speech impediment.
Yeah, and so Hawking made a guest cameo.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Was that from the Lost episode?
Oh, maybe so. Was that you, me, and Will?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you'll never hear it.
I'll never hear it, ever. See you guys. Bye.